So for those of you who are joining us live stream from AI Infra, my name is Tony Zirnoon. I'm the director of partnerships at a company called Actian, and with me I have two very distinguished friends and guests from the industry, and I'm going to introduce them. Itzhak, thank you for coming. Zsolt, thank you for coming. I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to get started for a very interesting topic.
Thank you, Tony, for hosting us. I'm Itzhak Assaraf. I'm CTO and founder of OneTouch.io. Doing cyber for 20-something years, dealing with data, the data layer, and we'll be happy to talk about the combination between data and AI.
Awesome. And Zsolt, thank you for coming.
Hi, Tony. Thank you for having me. So my name is Zsolt. I'm a mathematician by training, but I'm in cyber for like 17 years now. So yeah, it feels like a long time. And I started with data and encryption, but we are moving towards infrastructure and how you host AI securely on an infrastructure.
So we all been in cyber for a long time. Obviously, we don't listen or learn, or we don't learn our lessons, and I mean it's constantly evolving. Sometimes I feel the more things change, the more they stay the same. We all just came from a RSA show, right? The biggest security conference, 4,000 additional startup companies. They spawning more with AI. Obviously, we're using AI. And I wanted to see, we're going to be obviously talking about some of the unknown threats, right? I think that we are in the age of agentic, world, right? It's agentic AI. I feel like up until now, we've all been taught that you have to adopt defense in depth. Where is the depth in the AI infra, right? Is it going to help us? Can we continue to try to detect and add security to it, or is it really shifting? I sense there's something different. I like to ask you from RSA, just go back 2 weeks. What are some of the unknowns that each of you didn't know that you didn't know as you deal with AI, or come at RSA? So it's like, what is some of the unknowns for you that now you're like, oh wow, something new came up?
Yeah, I think as you said, the risk and insecurity are the same, but every new generation of technology creates new layer of threats, and you need to adjust your approach to that. I think before we'll talk about what is the risk in AI that is unique compared to other places. I think that first of all we need to understand the difference when you talk about agentic. So it's more like, we talk about it when you talk to an LLM model, it's more of a social engineering versus a classic data and defense. And when companies want to unlock their data into LLM models in order to get business value out of it, the main difference is that you need to shift your approach from block, protect, alert, into unlocking data, which means that you need to enable. So if the data needs to go into the model in order to generate business value, you need to see how you let 100% of the data go to the model, and put the controls in a way that will not block some of it. Because if you block some of it, you create limitation in your value. So that's one of the main things that you need to do a shift left in your thinking as a security professional.
So what I'm hearing you say is like, you can't just block certain data because the chief data officer wants the data. You have to know your data, you have to trust your data, you have to govern your data. That's just an anti, right? It's not just blocking.
Let me give you a real life example. Sure. One of our customers is a clinic research institute. Actually one of the largest in the US. They have more than 100 research organizations running in parallel. And they have a lot of clinic nodes, radiology, and others. Imagine that they're collecting from all over the US, from hospitals, from other places. Imagine that we'll take the classic approach of, if it contains sensitive data, I need to block it from going into the training model. 70% of the data will not go there. because it's very hard to anonymize data that coming from more than 1,000 health institute in order to be used in
Right.
your training models.
Right,
so you need to see how you, from one hand, comply and make sure that the sensitive data will not go there.
Right.
From the other hand, all the data that was gathered needs to go into the training model.
That's right.
So that's the difference in approach, and that's a good example between firewall
Yes.
or database protection than AI training process.
So we need security that is rather enabling than blocking.
Exactly. We always talk about it on the CISO level.
Yeah.
Always the CISO wanted to position himself as enabling the
Yes.
business. I think that one of the differentiation that we have in the AI era, you have to take this approach. Otherwise, there is no value to the process of trying to get value from the data.
Very interesting. So we're trying to solve one problem, which is the talent gap, and let's throw AI people, right? So we're going from the software as a service to service as a software, right? So that's great. New employees, right? So they bring new attack surfaces and governance issues that you need to do. So obviously deal with that. So I think there's also some sort of a collision between the chief data officer, chief security officer, chief compliance. So they need to kind of get together, right? So that's happening. In the meantime, right, we were at RSA and we saw a lot of vendors. So there's a lot of AI security. AI security for this, AI security for that, AI security for that. So the idea of a defense in depth, layering all this stuff, was nice when you had a depth. Now we don't have the depth, but the AI is also being used by the adversaries in a very different way. This is kind of like the back in the days of Enigma, right? If you wanted to fight a machine, you had to do a machine, right? And we've used deception to try to change that game, right? But I think that we need to take a different approach. We can't just see static. If you just sit static, they have the advantage. They have to be right one time, and they're not giving up. They have storm attacks that are happening, right? So there's got to be different approaches, right? Which is, I wanted to ask you, Zsolt, you and I were talking about this, and I was fascinated by some of the things you were telling me. I'm like, no, that's not possible. Tell us about what's your mission? What are you doing?
So our mission actually started more like 15 years ago when we started telling to people, in terms of cybersecurity, IDS and IPS are not working, and you need to do something else. I mean, we proposed something called intrusion tolerance. So you have to be an enabler in terms of data and in terms of networks and endpoints as well. And we had a couple of mostly government interested in that. Even the whole approach was kind of re-christened by DHS here. It was called moving target defense. So basically the whole idea is that you have to move the endpoints, you have to move even the whole infrastructure in order to make it secure. So, which is kind of a contradiction because you're adding chaos to the whole system.
Correct.
Which, CISOs, the data people, they don't like. Actually, it's very heretic as well. So it's like a heresy to tell them that, hey.
It's contrary to what we're hearing, right? You build
exactly.
infrastructure, use security infrastructure, create concentric circles into that. What you're telling me is kind of like a Sun Tzu type stuff, right? It's just the art of war. You're telling me, what I heard you is like an always moving target. You talk about chaos. You talk to me about chaos engineering. Maybe unpack that for the audience a little bit.
So chaos engineering, that came with the famous Netflix engineers called Chaos Monkey. That was basically you need to constantly stress test your system. So it's not just CI/CD, but you have to do CV as well, which is continuous verification.
Yes.
And kind of, I tell it to people, you have to beat up your own systems in order to make them resilient against the attackers beating up your systems.
Interesting.
And there was about 4 or 5 years ago, a security version of that. Mm-hmm. It's called security chaos engineering.
Okay.
It's more like an SRE approach, so a reliability engineers approach. So they design their system not proactive, but more unbeatable. So it's pretty easy to remediate things. It's pretty easy to
It's more of a by
build things
design,
up.
which what I'm hearing you say is
Exactly,
is a
secure by design.
It's like I call it like a defeat by design.
Exactly.
Right. Very interesting. So we're talking about the inherent contributor risk of the data, right? So how do I make sure that people who need the data, they get it in a way that is governed, trustable, avoid the garbage in, garbage out, right? We've interacted, right? With our companies trying to bring a classification engine to the data governance, even not the security side of it, right? But you have the security and compliance. You have to have the license to operate. You have to make sure you don't add more contributor risk. And you're saying, hey, in the meantime, hey, defense in depth was good, but we already proven that it's not working the way it was advertised, right?
Yeah.
You don't have all these different layers of adding a bunch of different vendors. We have 4,000 plus vendors. I'm gonna have the same versions with AI on top. We saw a lot of them, right? I don't think the stovetop model is gonna change, right? What I'm hearing say, hey, look, yes, you may add additional tools, but what if we change the game and you do a defeat by design, like be a moving target, in a sense, like increase your resiliency against these very motivated state, nation, and other attackers that are now using swarms to attack you, and let's not make it easy for them. Let's move it. Like you build castles and stuff like that, and what I'm hearing you say is like, let's make the castle morph, right? So I don't even know where the door is or the window is. Am I understanding it correctly? Is that kind of?
Well, it's a bit more than that. So
more than that.
You don't just move the castle because if the enemy is already in the castle, it's if you move the castle, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So if they had installed malware or anything, that's going to be still there. So what we do is actually we destroy the castle and just pop it up somewhere else from. They call it immutable state, or back in those days we used golden copies of virtual machines, VMware, and that's going to be completely clean.
Yes.
And working as it's supposed to, and so on and so on. So I think that's the right approach.
Interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the conversations today. I mean, when I hear AI Infra, what is AI Infra, right? It's a new set of data centers that have to deal with a lot more data, much more throughput of data. So obviously inspecting that data is very hard. So we need to bring them to the edge, right? So latency is an issue. They talk about security being a big issue, right? Coming there. And if I get into that model, right, now it's not just an infrastructure but just a set of controls. You're talking to someone who is being taught to think. So getting closer to that brain. And if I can put something that makes you think what is reality, what is not, right? This is poisoning, this is a lot of stuff. If I change your model, now suddenly the output's very different. If I'm a hacker and I suddenly get access to your company as a North Korean employee, we heard that at RSA coming up, they're coming in there, they get access. It's no longer just a janitor going to a rack, putting a USB and get some controls. Is this guy going in there and ingesting certain things and change reality with a different version of truth? So this is what some of the unknown in my mind is.
Yeah.
Look, you need to protect these brains that you're building. There's children being grown up. You want to make sure they build the right synapses. You don't put your children in front of the MTV at a 3-year-old, right? The behavior changes. You feed the kid the right data, otherwise
Exactly.
garbage in, garbage out. So I think there is a challenge that with AI Infra, it's very, very different. And that is, we won't get the chance to bolt on security as we've done before. So this idea of a secure by design, defeat by design, it resonates and is something that, hey, look, we don't have all the solutions, but I think there's a couple different approaches. The idea was to get uncomfortable and talk about things that we haven't done, because if you continue to do the same thing, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
So how do we go about this? I mean, what are the things that we talking about? There's other topics that we can talk about, but continue your thoughts. I mean, you were saying that.
Yeah.
So don't assume security, assume bad guys are there, be a moving target. What else?
So, if you want to, let's say, poison your child mind, you need to basically feed him with information, like misinformation, constantly.
Okay.
And that gets back to the topic of dwell time in terms of cybersecurity. So if you let the attackers dwell in for a long time, that's when they can put false training data around, but that's going to be your neck
This
of
going
woods.
back to what Itzhak was
Exactly.
talking about, right?
And
it's not just security, is reliability, is integrity,
exactly.
right?
Exactly, and that's so basically what we do is we make sure that you control the dwell time. You won't be able to see I don't know, like you won't get into a situation where your attacker is going to be there in years or months or without unnoticed. And when you notice it, then by that time, it created havoc. Like it was with SolarWinds a couple of years ago, but now with AI, it's actually happening much faster. Not just the intrusion, but also creating false data. But I think you have much better
Yeah, I
view
think
on
that first of all, if you think about what's the difference between hacking to a data lake than hacking to an AI model.
Right, what's the difference?
Was it very simple, time to value.
Time to value.
Yes, if I will hack to a data lake, I have these trillion records that now I need to understand the structure of the data, the content of the data. I need to pull all of that, understand the business context that relate to the data in order to get value.
Right.
Where, and I can give an example. Let's take a hacker like an internal threat, for example. So one of our customers said, one of the things that I'm concerned about, that's an energy company, said, we have all the telemetric, all the data, all the structure of our electricity factories inside our LLM models. Someone can come and ask, how do I shut down the electricity in New York?
Easy.
Now, if I will need to figure it out from stealing 5 terabytes of a nuclear plant, okay, it will take me a few months. With LLM, I can just ask the system will tell me this is the path.
I see, so time to value for the adversary.
Time to value, so this is why the approach of moving the target all the time it's resident, and you need also to look at it from, of course, at the end of the day, all of the infrastructure and serve the data. You need to look at it from the data point of view and map your risk.
It's interesting. It's kind of like, what's the most important brain in the United States, right? The president, the Pope. What happens to threat it? They move the president. Maybe have decoys. So what I'm hearing is, hey, you're building this brain, it's an important brain. You want to make sure that it's not accessible because it's just a matter of time and energy and resources, and these guys have swarm attacks are coming at it, and they're not going to let go. It's not just, I'm going to create a DDoS or this. It's very well orchestrated, and you're making an easy button for them. People come in, not a janitor, an employee comes in there. So your information may have been different data lakes, secured by databases, a bunch of different access controls. You had a depth. Now, they come in, they have access to LLMs. So now, why should I have access to that information, that knowledge pool, if I didn't have otherwise? So that is the governance aspect of it that you're talking about. And you also want to train these models going in there. So that is fascinating. Time to value.
Time to value is one of them. I think that it will be good to, when you ask yourself, this is one of the risks. What are the new risks that come in with LLM? That's something that every CISO needs to map, risk officer in the organization. So we talked about internal threat. The other one, and you gave this example of the president, I will continue with the analogy. Okay, imagine that I will start briefing the president with wrong data.
We've gone to war by that, right?
Okay,
it's not too long ago.
Exactly. So if I get the wrong data, and if we'll talk about LLM, I can poison. I will tell you a personal story that happened to me 2 weeks ago.
Interesting.
Okay, so I was working on improving our technical documentation using OpenAI. While doing that, not intentionally, I trained OpenAI on who is OneTouch. A week ago, we asked OpenAI who are the top 5 discovery classification solutions. We got an answer. After we worked on our documentation, OpenAI said OneTouch.
Oh, wow.
The public OpenAI learned few hundred documents about the spec and performance and suddenly the processing versus others, we affected unintentionally the answer of the LLM model. If I will go and train the model with things that I want to deceive the organization, even on competitive.
Interesting. You did it for good, but I can see how it could be.
I didn't even know that I'm doing it. That's the point.
But you brought me a different point. We all in the cybersecurity, at the mercy of our analysts, right? Who's who. There's this magic quadrant. We call it a CYA quadrant, which I think there's a cost per pixel to the right. Let's talk. But in the past, this was called briefing. The more you talk to your analyst, the more he knew about it. So it's interesting if this is happening. I'm just curious what's going to happen to the analyst thing, right? They need to change their game too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but you bring a very good point. Like, look, it's use it for good, great, but it's going to be easily good for bad.
Exactly.
That are where the AI analysts solutions. So like Gartner is being disrupted
Okay.
as we speak. So yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to talk about other things. Look, we are inheriting a lot of existing controls, right? It's a data center moving to a different data server in the cloud and moving on-prem because of custom GPUs availability. You talked about the challenges around the power and everything, but also the amount of data going to those racks, the throughput of those racks, right? The security also needs to be built in. There are a couple of companies that I talk to that are trying to do that, with the PCI boxes that can do hundreds of gigs or more into those boxes. So, great. So there's a lot of people thinking about it. There are people that are solving different problems. So let's talk about like other assumed securities, right? Encryption.
Yeah.
Everybody say, how do you secure your data? Encrypt your data. A couple different problems. One, most encryption today is static, right? So AS256 static, So there's attacks that we've heard, this conversation, AI-driven attacks that are trying to kind of do inference. They can find if the entropy is predictable. But there's this other thing, right? Back in the day, we had a Y2K problem. Sky is falling. I hear now some people are marketing Y2Q, year to quantum, quantum resiliency, quantum readiness. And we're assuming that if I'm using certain securities, right, I'm secure. I'm encrypting the data, it's secure. What's happening there? Can we continue to assume that security, we're not too far from that, but what do you say?
So two things, quantum and AI,
Yes.
if we'll combine those two
Yeah.
things. So quantum is, let's call it compute on steroids,
Sure.
but significantly. AI is the ability to process data very fast and come to conclusion.
Yeah.
If you combine that with encryption, so as you mentioned, quantum safe,
Yeah.
it's been proven already that 90-something% of the encryption existing encryption are hackable if you have access to a quantum computer. Instead of 100 years, you can do it in a few
Or
seconds.
even digital annealers, right? I mean, they're out there. So.
Exactly. So on that level, encryption doesn't really work, and then there is all the practice of moving to a different set of algorithms and so. But if you look at it from AI point of view, encryption is a stage before. Why? Because yes, you protect your data encrypted, but at some point you need to expose your model to the data, so you need to decrypt the model.
Correct.
So now, and another thing that you need to remember when you talk about AI, and I will continue with the comparison to data lake. In data lake, if I put the wrong data there, or I put sensitive data there, I can go and fix that. I can delete the record. Okay, I can tokenize the record.
Got it?
In AI model, if I push sensitive data inside the model, it's a one-way ticket. I need to destroy the entire model and train it again, and we know how much it costs to do that.
It's like teaching your kid bad four-letter words. You can't go kill your kid, right?
Exactly. And
Let's redo that.
So first of all, you
Just
need to
feed
look
more
at, you need to put the right controls and monitor the data before it goes. How do I go into the pipeline of the training?
Right.
The training of data, all the data that goes, is not that simple because you have different channels. So you need first of all to see what type of data goes into the training model, both from deceiving, the initial threat that we talked about, but also from sensitive data. We had two examples, real examples from customers. One LLM model knew to answer the question because of mistake of training it, what is the shareholders of all the board directors?
Yeah.
Because one of the spreadsheets that went by mistake was the board decision on how to divide the shares to different executives and others. So if you look at something like that, that's HR data that didn't need to go there. It's there. Now what you're going to do, you have a model that you spend 6-8 months on training.
Right.
Now you have the HR system of your employee. They're including
you,
salaries, including option plan, including...
Yes.
So you need to control how data goes. The second thing is when you consume data. So you need to see what type of questions goes in. Are the users of data abuse the model in order to get, and we gave the example of electricity. There are many other examples that I can abuse in order to get data that I'm not supposed.
Don't tell them that.
Another example, health insurance company.
Right?
what is the health condition of the NFL player?
Interesting.
I can adjust my bets because the health policy is stored in that health insurance company. So those things needs to be monitored. Also the outcome side, to monitor the prompt and to see what data goes in and out, and based on that identify questions that have been asked that are actually, it's different. If we talk about the history of hacking, so you put payloads and you have patterns, so you have all the detections of that. Here, the attack is actually human talking to human.
That's right.
It's simple human questions, and you need to understand the context of those questions and the intent of the person that asks.
Very interesting. So, just to sum it up, so basically before we're going after the controls, the keys and everything, get to the data lakes, extract, and they had to figure out and do this lateral movement, the MITRE attack and everything. Now it's more about the business logic, the context, the intent behind it. So we're gonna see more technology, more solutions, and more practice come around it. But we have to don't assume security just because using certain cryptography. I think, and I said let's get uncomfortable. Up until now, we've seen this movie before. Those of us been a couple decades in there. So we said, hey, we have infrastructure and we have infrastructure security. Anything you say can add security next to it and make it secure, right? Network security, endpoint security, cloud security. Interesting. So what do we add? More controls, more things on it, and we said in depth, right? Because I think where we're going, and the security guys are like, oh my God, sky's falling. We tried to do this for virtualization. We failed. We tried to do cloud. We failed. $32 billion acquisition, we still have a cloud security problem. IoT, blah, blah, blah. Here we are the AI. Now we need to figure out, okay, what is different? Should I worry about the sky falling? I think not. But what do you think?
We have other issues before the sky starts falling. So the whole system is very fragile, and the attackers are much smarter because it's not just people using AI anymore, but sooner or later, actually very soon, AI is gonna fight AI, and AI agents gonna fight AI agents, or you're not gonna be interrogated by a proper FBI agent, but there's gonna be like an agentic AI retrieving your data from something else, everything. And that's why it's actually super important how to manage your data and how to manage your network, that this thing doesn't happen that easily. But again, in a best case scenario, what we can do is we are buying time to people. So we are buying time for not just to people, but for actually AI agents. So our AI agents.
So I believe that, let's call it classic security.
Sure.
It needs to happen. Access control, access control, techniques of moving the cheese, for the mouse not to catch it.
Right.
All those things needs to happen. Sensitive data management needs to happen. Regulation, compliance, all of that needs to happen. It just needs to adopt to the new set of threats, to the new behavior. Understand that now it's not human against machine, is a humanoid machine against human. And very soon, and I think today it's happening, we use AI, we use LLM in order to defend LLM. So when we figure out what...
So I said like the enigma, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the machine against
exactly.
the machine.
How do we know the context of a question to understand the context or data that goes in? What is the business context? Is it an NFL player, an employee, or a customer? Maybe customer data is okay. Maybe it's a model to train for marketing, and it's okay as long as it's leads. But the moment it's become a paid customer, that's not okay, because that's a marketing engine and it shouldn't process a paid customer data. So all of that needs to happen. It needs to adjust in terms of volume, speed, accuracy, context. All of that needs to happen. And on top of that, you need to have the understanding, and we go back to the beginning of the conversation, that it's no longer blocking, it's enabling. You need to enable, you need to make sure that the people that consume the data have the ability to do it very quickly, almost real time, because the business change, they want to adopt. And also the people that feed the model will do it constantly, accurately, up to date, but still all the controls needs to be there.
But
So-
do you think, sorry, so do you think there's going to be human in the loop for longer time? Or because right now there is human in the loop because you're using your models against somebody using their models to attack, right?
Let me tell you a
So, but-
secret.
Sure.
The answer is already done. We use LLM modules to train our SLM module, and the
Exactly.
SLM module monitor the traffic that goes into the LLM module.
Interesting.
It's an automatic
Yeah.
pipeline that the LLM train the SLM, that train YSLM because of performance.
And can it adapt or can it improve himself or itself?
Yes.
And
yes,
that's
of
the
course.
that's
That's
the
the way
best
to
part.
do it.
Exactly.
That's the way to do it. You learn you have the ability, you have the machine that teach the other machine, and we talk about customized or specialized modules. So you need a specialized modules in order to monitor what goes into LLM, but that specialized module needs to be accurate. Therefore, you can rely on public LLM in order to train the specialized agent. So all of that is done. Do we need the human in the middle? Yes. The human write all this process, the human improve all this process, and
That human needs to be like more of an expert in the loop, right? Because
Exactly.
we also have the talent gap, right? So we don't have that many people. I don't know how many security companies I have that also are data
you don't
scientists,
need a lot of
right?
them anymore.
So you think there's hope. So just to summarize, so we are in a new era. There's an inflection point. We have a new attack surface, right? AI, humanoids, and things like that, and it's constantly moving, right? They're evolving. They're relentless. Before they did a DDoS and this, they were going after controls and trying to find a way in. They had to find stuff. Now they don't have it. You have the time to value problem. You have the talent gap. You're buying time, right? You say, hey, look, do something, buy yourself time. Don't be a sitting duck, right? If you have something, they're going to come after that. Enabler, right? Make sure that the business continues to have, because the AI is going to give you the edge. So you have to make sure the CDO, the chief data officer, is talking to the business, is talking to the security, governance, compliance. Do everything you need to do. Patch your systems. Still in infra, right? Build your servers more securely. We're not saying don't do that, but you have new attack surfaces, and they're going after the context and the business.
Exactly.
That is the one change that I see.
Exactly.
I think is also, we've done this many times, reliance of existing security controls is just not going to work, right? All the way to cryptography, we talked about it, and really, how do we shift left, right? How do we get more into the proactive? I think the message is built in whatever security controls and business logic that you need to do, enable the business, but do it in a way that is by design, whether it's secure by design or
Exactly.
like what you're doing, which is more of a defeat by design.
Yep.
Look, we're in California, there's earthquakes all the time. We just had one 6 months ago, 7 Richters, nothing happened. A 4.3 almost pummeled DMR, right? Why? Because we've invested in early detection, we've done the thing to increase the resiliency seismically. I think we need to do things to, by design, increase the cyber resiliency of the AI infra. You have all the vertical, AIs. Security is a horizontal, but let's make sure that's also built in to all the different
Exactly.
stacks that we're trying to do. And then use techniques and procedures, just like they do. But you're saying, hey, shift the game. Let's make it more difficult for them to find that in, right? I mean, so there is hope.
Yeah.
I think, though, if we don't do it, to finish my thought, I told you don't have to worry about the sky falling down. You know why? Because I think, if I'm right, if we don't do this, the floor beneath you will open up and swallow you whole. So don't worry about the sky falling down.
Yeah, I think that you see the trend in the market, and one of the things that changed recently, and it's the beginning of a trend. You have security vendors and you have data management vendors.
Correct.
And what we see, AI brought both of them together, and actually the new security vendors are going to be the data management vendor integrating security into the management process.
We just did that. You and I, we did that, right? With two different
Exactly.
companies, data
Exactly.
management, security. Yep.
It's no longer I will buy a data management solution and I will buy a security solution to put on top of that or a side net. Actually, the data solution needs to have the controls
Built in.
integrated.
Very
and
interesting.
that's the trend that we're going to see.
So let's do a couple of rapid fire. So, what was interesting for you at RSA? The good, the bad, and ugly.
Well, as you mentioned, so defense in depth. It's not just that, but now, by this time, CISOs have this kind of a fatigue of defense in depth because they are stacking up solutions upon solutions,
vendor
and you cannot
fatigue,
really.
right?
It's not just the vendor; it's more like the too many
Tool fatigue,
layers,
yeah, too many
and it's too many points of where it can go down and
Correct.
it will go down. So that's one thing. The other good thing is like. The big players in the industry, so like the hyperscalers, they're mostly just the research teams yet, but I think it's gonna trickle down very fast because in terms of AI, everything is happening pretty fast. They started realizing that static is not gonna cut it. So it was designed against human attackers and so on and so on. And the biggest problem, and that's the bad part as well, is like they just started to realize now, but over RSA, there were like 90% of these, let's say, vendors were dropping AI agents. AI agents here, AI agents there, and they are not secure, not from the data perspective, not from the infrastructure perspective. So they can touch anything, there's no control. And now they realize that these agents might need some protection, and there are some protocol level protections that they want to set up, but again, they are just setting up the protocols now, and by the time they come up with that, let's say in a couple of months, because it's going to be fast, we'll have tens of millions of agents out there working or more. So yeah, I'm not worried about the sky is falling.
You're not? Okay. What about you? What was the good, the bad, ugly on RSA? What were the takeaways?
Nothing to do with security.
Nothing to do with security?
No.
Okay.
I can say officially COVID is over.
All right.
You see all the people going back to office.
There are?
People came to conferences. This year you see all the people back, the amount of people. And I think that we're talking about AI and AI replacing humans. What I saw in this RSA is that humans are still human and they need
interaction.
They need the interaction between them. Every RSA there is a new trend. 1 year is a zero trust. This year is everything is AI. It will continue like that. But it was interesting to see the need for human interaction.
Yes, that's good. I think we don't need to lose our humanity in the age of agentic AI, right? So I think that's great. We've been at it for 40 minutes. Any other parting thoughts? Any nuggets about this? Hey, I have a curiosity, right? Don't assume security. Protect your data. Make sure your data is reliable, it's governable, it's trusted. Enable security, right? Don't be a sitting duck.
Yeah.
Be a movable target. Think differently. You can't assume that what you've done, obviously we've proven, right?
It's not gonna work. Yeah.
Sky may not be falling, but hey, you better do something. You have a secure ground to build your stack. If you're stacking layers after layers of AI infra, if you're not thinking security, I think you're stacking vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that if to summarize from my point of view, it's a joint effort. It's no longer the CISO is security, the chief data officer is business value, the chief governance officer is making sure we won't get a fine.
Yes.
It's no longer that. They need to work together. The vendors need to join together in order to deliver security as part of the process. The chief data officer needs to make sure that security is part of the process. Yep. And we see even that trend when you see committees. It's no longer a security vendor selling to a security representative. Yep. It's a committee from the customer side that talk about all the layers and looking for a single solution to cover both the business need and the security needs and the governance needs all in one. And that's, I think, the trend.
It's great. Well, folks, we're at AI Infra, where we're trying to have the different layers talk to each other. This is fascinating. And to quote my good friend, Bill, we were talking about this, and he says, look, AI is helping us zoom right. And we're talking about, in the days that AI helps you zoom right, you need to shift left. And we just talk about protection. So shift left while AI zooms right. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Awesome. Thank you.